Supreme Court has just released a major decision which could have a profound impact on the midterm elections. The justices issuing a ruling on a case out of Louisiana involving the Voting Rights Act, redistricting, and whether states must end any consideration of race when redrawing congressional maps. The decision potentially reducing the influence of minority voters and minority representation in Congress. Let's get right to our senior Washington correspondent, Devin Dwyer, who covers the Supreme Court for us. Devin.
Kira, this decision is 6-3, written by Justice Samuel Alito, and it's a significant decision and a setback for the landmark Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was passed to guarantee equality in how we vote, and of course addressing the systemic and historic racial discrimination, especially across the South. This decision came in a case out of Louisiana involving a court-ordered drawing addition of a second majority black district in that state because of the size of the state's population. And the Supreme Court today, in this decision, said that the court violated the 14th Amendment by adding, the state rather, violated the 14th Amendment by adding that district. They used race impermissibly, consciously, to add a second district to aid those voters, and they said that is simply not allowed under our Constitution. Justice Samuel Alito didn't go as far as saying race can never be used in drawing these maps. That's something the court has affirmed before to comply with the Voting Rights Act, but he put a significant new limit on how courts can order states to draw their maps to be more equitable. He said that Section 2 imposes liability only when evidence supports a strong inference that the state intentionally drew its map to discriminate. So a setback for minority voters in Louisiana, and now, Kira, the impact of this decision is going to start to ripple across the country.
Hey, everyone. So we knew it was going to happen, and it happened. The United States Supreme Court essentially gutted the Voting Rights Act. What does this mean? It means that now in all these different states, a lot of them in the South, these conservative legislatures are going to try to redraw the lines, redraw the maps around who can vote and who is going to be represented. What now is going to happen is it's going to be more difficult to challenge those laws that get passed that we know are intended to make it more difficult for you to have the representatives that you want at a local level, state level, and congressional level. And here's the bottom line. They may put all kinds of obstacles in. Let's not fall for it, because they know that the power is with the people. And they know that when people vote in their numbers, that's when change comes. This means checking your voter registration status. This means knowing where your polling place is. They will try to make it more difficult, but we cannot be deterred. People ask me, Kamala, why are you optimistic? I'm optimistic because I know the power is with the people. And I know that we're not going to let anybody take our power from us. So let's get out there and let's fight.
Explaining the Supreme Court decision on voting rights like I would explain it to my toddler. So this represents my toddler's classroom, and it's broken up into 4 different activity tables where the children have to sit and they have to make decisions together, like this table colors, this table does math, etc. So it's time for snack. And every class at snack is going to have to vote on what they want for snack. Do they want a cookie or do they want a cracker? Now, all of these tables, green right here, they're going to pick crackers, crackers, crackers. But at the blue table where my children sit, they want cookies. They're going to pick cookies. Great. Now, the Supreme Court is going to go around to all the tables and they're going to say, okay, guys, why did you all sit together? And they're going to say, well, we all sat together because we like the color green. And we sat together because we like the color orange. And we sat together because we like the color red. But at the table my children are at, they're going to say, well, we sat together because we was black. I mean, you know, we just kind of naturally gravitate to each other. You know, we have the same interests. We like the same things. We all wanted cookies. What can I say? And the Supreme Court is going to say, ooh, because you're black. Now, had you said because you're blue, I could have went for that. But you said y'all sat together because you're black. So therefore, we can't have things about race in this country, guys. Of course not in the United States. Of course, we would not do things based on race. That would be crazy. So we're going to have to break this party up, okay? So you all are going to have to go over here and get in some different groups. We're going to have to break it up. We cannot have an all black party. You understand what I'm saying? That's just not going to work. So we're going to have to get you guys separated. The problem with this separation is you guys all wanted cookies, okay? And all the other groups wanted crackers. The thing is, now you're in a group where the majority still wants crackers, okay? But oh well, because y'all should have never told me y'all sat together because y'all was black. Y'all should have said it's because y'all was blue. Because anybody can make a group based on their political party, right? So it's like if all the reds want to make groups that just like agree with them and they just want to draw the groups up in whatever kind of ways are agreeable for them, they're going to be able to do that. If they just want to be together based on their race, though, we're not going to be able to do that, okay? So we're going to have to break it up. Now, unfortunately, the way this is going, you know, you may end up having to have crackers. You just, you know, because you're in that group. But don't get me wrong, you can campaign for cookies. You absolutely can still campaign for cookies and try to see if you can win your group over to be in a cookie group now instead of a crackers group. You can really try for that, and there's no problem with that whatsoever. Now, the whole reason why we even had blue groups in the first place is because systemically, you know, there has been some disenfranchisement, you know what I mean, where you all have not been able to pick what you all might like, even though you do make up a fourth of the class. So maybe you could have a fourth of the representation. We see that in states like Mississippi that has 4 districts. 3 of those districts are red, 1 of them is blue. That blue district is also about 65% black. Yeah, right after this Supreme Court ruling, the state auditor who really wants to be the governor really so bad, he was like, we got to break this up. You know what I mean? That was like his first thought. That was like the first article that he wrote. So that's what ends up happening, is that history repeats itself in terms of disenfranchisement. But just as the people who have fought before us, you can't even really call them ancestors because some of them are literally still alive, okay? Just as the people who fought before us have fought, we will fight again, okay? And I do believe we will win. But this Supreme Court, Lord Jesus, they are putting us in a very dangerous position where black and brown communities are set to lose a lot of power, and maps are set to be redrawn that can really have generational impacts, okay? So it's really important that we all pay attention, that we all vote like we've never voted before, and that we all really get on the action items that are ahead of us, which is making sure maybe we can find some more pockets, turn some more tides, win some more people to our side, so that even in these new and gerrymandered districts, we can outvote them, okay? Because they're trying to cheat us out of our spot. They are trying so hard, but we're not going to let them win.
Today is one of the darkest days in the history of civil rights in the United States, as the Supreme Court has just eviscerated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act in a 6-3 decision. Because of this decision, by 2028, Black Americans and Latino Americans are going to lose a significant amount of representation in Congress and in state legislatures. I would not be surprised if this is what the map looks like by 2028, where Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina have no more majority black districts, and there are significantly fewer in Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida. This decision revolves around this map in Louisiana, which the Supreme Court struck down as an illegal racial gerrymander because they drew 2 black majority districts in Louisiana. The Supreme Court basically said you can no longer use race to draw districts, but you can use partisanship. And because of how voting patterns, race and partisanship are almost the same things in the South, they are a distinction without a difference, and so while Republicans will say they drew these maps without using race, they clearly did, because blacks do not form a majority in any of them, and when they split Memphis into 3 pieces and New Orleans into 3 pieces, they were using race and partisanship. And Democrats must be ruthless in response. We can draw maps like this now in California because the VRA is essentially gutted. We need to move to do this in 2028 and let Republicans know if they eliminate black representation in the South, we will counter and eliminate all Republicans in states like California, Illinois, and Colorado. Now is not the time to be timid. We must come out and immediately let Republicans know that if they proceed with racially gerrymandering the South to eliminate all black Democrats, essentially, we are going to respond in force And we are going to pass an amendment in New York to be able to redistrict there, and we will eliminate all Republicans in many, many blue states if they move forward with these racist gerrymanders across the South.
Yesterday, April 29th, the Supreme Court made a major ruling. This video is going to be chock full of information, so I'm going to use my iPad to make sure that I stay on topic. So, on April 29th, yesterday, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a 6-3 decision that significantly weakens the Voting Rights Act, specifically Section 2, which has been one of the main tools used to fight racial discrimination in voting. Here is what the court actually did. It blocked a Louisiana congressional map that included 2 majority Black districts. It ruled that creating districts based on race, even to help minority representation, can be unconstitutional. And it changed the legal standard for discrimination. The biggest shift was that before, you could challenge voting laws based on discriminatory outcomes. But now, you must prove intentional discrimination. And that is a much higher bar to meet in court. The reason why this is such a big deal is because the ruling effectively makes it much harder to challenge racial gerrymandering. It weakens one of the last strong parts of the Voting Rights Act, and it opens the door for states to redraw districts with fewer legal obstacles. What could happen next? Well, states, especially in the South, may redraw maps, reduce or eliminate majority Black or minority districts. This could impact future elections, especially House seats and representation of minority communities. Some estimates suggest it could shift control of Congress depending on how many maps change. The reactions are very divided. The supporters say that ruling prevents race from being used too heavily in drawing districts, and it enforces equal protection under the Constitution. However, critics say that it guts protections against discrimination and makes it nearly impossible to prove voting rights violations. This could also reduce the representation for Black and Latino voters. So if you've been paying attention to what's going on in the House of Representatives as well as the Senate, as far as the SAVE Act, then you will know that these two things could be connected. If you are not familiar with the SAVE Act, please hold on. I'm going to upload a video about that in just a moment. Please go check that out first and then come back to this. So here's the connection between the Supreme Court ruling and the SAVE Act. What you're looking at is 2 separate actions that, when combined, could reshape how voting works in the US. So this recent decision that happened yesterday, April 29th, builds on cases such as Shelby County versus Holder and Brownovic versus the Democratic National Committee. This effectively raises the bar again by making it harder to prove discrimination under the Voting Rights Act and limiting how race can be used to protect minority voting power. It is now going to be harder to stop voting restrictions in court. And here is what the SAVE Act is trying to do. The SAVE Act would require proof of citizenship documents to register, limit online and voting registration, as well as require more in-person verification. It changes how people register and stay registered. Here's why these 2 things should matter to you. Before, in the old system, the states passed a law. Federal protections such as the Voting Rights Act could block it or strike it down more easily. However, now, the states pass stricter voting rules such as the SAVE style policies, and challenging them in court could be much harder because now you need to prove intentional discrimination, not just impact. Here's what it could mean in real life. For women, the SAVE Act could require matching documents as well as court rulings, making it harder to challenge barriers. So more hoops with fewer legal protections. For trans individuals, documentation mismatches such as name or gender markers and fewer legal pathways to challenge restrictions. For people who move frequently, you will constantly need to re-register. There will also be fewer protections if systems create obstacles, and the broader impact includes fewer successful legal challenges, more state control over voting rules, and potential shifts in turnout and representation. The big shift is that the system is moving from preventing discrimination before it happens to try to fight it after it happens, with fewer tools. Please make sure to like, comment, and share this video with somebody who may not be aware. And if you yourself did not know that this was happening, I implore you to share it because more than likely the people around you do not know that this is happening. My name is Viola. Follow for more updates. Thank you.